Hello, good afternoon. As I experience synchronization to my immediate left here in Homestead, Florida, I would like to greet you. Today is Saturday, August 30th, 2025, and I am in Homestead, Florida. The topic of this lecture is data interception in gang stalking campaigns. Now, as I experience more synchronization to my immediate left, synchronization being the mobilization of gang stalkers by liaisons to appear in front of or in the general point of view of a targeted individual at a specific moment in time for a specific reason, as a specific vicinity is reached by the targeted person. Okay, you're going in a straight line, for example, you're walking in a direction, your speed, your pace, all of that is being watched. And as you travel north on foot, as you approach, for example, a crosswalk, it has been prearranged 350 paces ago that a scooter, a bike, a pedestrian, or a person doing something like rollerblading or roller skating or doing what have you, cuts you off at that exact moment in time as you are going through that exact crosswalk at the exact speed you're walking. On average, a person walks about 3 miles an hour. You're walking 3 miles an hour north. As you're about 300 paces away from the crosswalk, someone on a motorized scooter takes a signal from a liaison. They're mobilized towards your general direction. It's instantly calculated that that scooter is going to cut you off the very second you step foot on that crosswalk for no reason other than to obstruct your path, to annoy you, or to cause a possible collision resulting in bodily injury, typically to the targeted person who is walking rather than the motorist who is on a scooter or a bike. I just experienced that the very second I grabbed my tablet. A few people walked over to my immediate left, stopped, and acted like they were listening to a concert or something, which I found to be a bit suspicious given the fact that right here on the corner of Busway and Southwest 177th Avenue in Homestead, Florida, particularly at this time on a Saturday, there are not many people congregated at this exact spot. That's why I chose this exact spot, right in front of the Hookie movie theater. I guess that's what it's called now, the IMAX, right next to the transit center. The minute I grab my tablet is the very second people start walking up towards my general vicinity, obviously looking to hear what I'm talking about, even though I do not know them and they do not know me. They are simply following orders. They are simply taking signals. They are simply doing what they do, and that is called gang stalking, ladies and gentlemen. Data interception. How does data interception play into gang stalking? Well, data interception, some people know it by other names. Some people call it hacking. Some people call it eavesdropping. Some people call it just sticking your nose in other people's business. There's a lot of different things that people call it, but its proper name is data interception, because everything that a person communicates Okay, be it in person, be it through email, be it through text message, be it through a phone call on a landline, be it through a phone call on a cellular device, be it through a social media app, a message, or be it through any digital means. Okay, it could be through a Bluetooth call through your vehicle. Any method of communication where information starts one place and ends in another is called data communication. If a person has a conversation with another person and they are using just plain old-fashioned words to communicate to one another, that is data communication. Because information that is originating somewhere, namely in your brain, is being processed and is being released through your mouth through the speaking mechanism. The sound waves leave your mouth and enter the ear canals of the next person, and their brain processes the sounds that leave your mouth as words and gives meaning to those words. That process is called data communication. If I send you an email from my personal or work email accounts, the email originates in my email account through a composed message. I type the message. I put your email address in the receiver box. I hit send. That digital form of communication, that email, is transmitted through fiber optic technology in the form of data packets, bits, and pixels, arranged into words, numbers, phrases, you name it, symbols, through a central server, through another set of fiber optics, into another central server, and into your inbox, all within the click of a mouse. That too is data communication. You pick up your cell phone, you send a text message to somebody. Could be a colleague, could be a coworker, could be a significant other, could be your offspring, could be anybody, anywhere, practically in the whole world now. With GSM technology, you can text message anyone in the world anytime. The text message originates in your cellular device. You type the message, you send the message. The message goes through the fiber optics mechanism. It's collected by a cellular tower. The information is transmitted from your phone to the cellular tower to the next phone, if it's in the immediate vicinity. That's data communication. You go on your favorite social media website, you go to the messages box, you click one of your social media acquaintances picture. Their name comes up in the receiver box. You type a message, you send it. That message is sent internally from your mailbox to their mailbox. That's data communication. If you want to take it back to the old days, as they say it, if I were to take a piece of notebook paper, write a message to you on it with a pencil, walk up to you and hand you that piece of notebook paper with the written note on it, that is data communication. As I experience more synchronization to my immediate left, I'm going to call that out every time I see it because it creeps me out. Okay? If these people were to start appearing left and right all the time, all day, every day, it would probably creep me out less. But I notice more of it when I'm doing something. Like, for example, if I'm recording a lecture, or if I'm printing and scanning documents, or if I'm typing something on a computer, or if I'm at a clothing store or something, picking out some new clothes, or if I'm in the middle of perhaps a phone call where I'm discussing official business. It's like when I'm always occupied, that's when they start popping up. That's what is so intriguing about it. You notice an uptick of gang stalking when you're doing certain things as opposed to others. Now, it's always around you. It never sleeps. But you see an uptick in this synchronization when you're doing certain things. And data communication is one of those things. When you are communicating to another person, your communication has power. It has power over your circumstances. It has power over another person's circumstances. It could have power over a lot of people's circumstances. It can have power over governmental matters. Words are in themselves potent tools. Okay, if you've ever taken college level communications classes, they teach you that words are symbols. Words have intrinsic and explicit meaning. You can say a lot with words. Even if your words are subtle, they can imply a lot. Even if your words are very explicit, they can be very concrete or direct. Ultimately, a person's words are a reflection of their worldview. Okay, there's an old saying that says the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. That is typically an expression that is used to describe how a person does not differ from their progenitors that much. Okay, you've heard the expression like father like son, or like mother like daughter, or something to that effect. It's sort of an expression, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, meaning a person's personality, their behavior, their movements, their motivations are not going to be that much different from their parents' character, behaviors, and motivations, just because that's just how people believe. I mean, people, I guess, believe that because you're genetically similar to another person, you're going to act like that person just because. I happen to sharply disagree with that. I don't think a person's DNA or their genetics has anything to do with how they act. It's your worldview that determines how you act. Period. That's my opinion. I've held that opinion, and I'll continue to hold that opinion. But the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree with respect to your words either. If you're the tree and your words are the apple, they're going to land where you want them to land. Okay? If you say something to somebody, be it privately or publicly, what you say to them is not going to be much of a deviation from how you really see the world, even if you lie to that person. Okay? That's why in American courtrooms, okay, and for the most part in courtrooms around the world, there's something called an evidentiary process. And the reason that there's an evidentiary process in the American courts is because false narratives can have as much power as truth if they are successful. Okay, if I go into a court of law with a false accusation against somebody, and there's very little evidence either way, but action must be taken because of the severity of the matter, and this matter is before a jury, the narrative that I create about this person who's on trial will be weighed against a few things. It'll be weighed against my character and background. It'll be weighed against the character and background of the defendant. It'll be weighed against the circumstances. It'll be weighed against factors like, for example, likelihood and the capacity of the offender to offend. It could be weighed against things like the individual's circumstances when this alleged event occurred, whether or not the defender and the accused have a history. But in spite of all that, if there is no concrete evidence, a false narrative can be spun against all these factors. That's why there is an evidentiary process. It's so that the truth can prevail as often as possible in a court of law. False narratives have no place in a court of law because a court of law is an official government entity. And anything that the U.S. government puts its name behind, it has to be true, it has to be efficient, and it has to follow the precepts present in the United States Constitution and in the Constitution of the 50 states that constitute this country. So in a court of law, the evidentiary process must be vetted fully and thoroughly so that the truth or circumstances as close to the truth can be made manifest in that courtroom in the interest of justice. What is data interception? If I communicate something to you, let's say I write a note to you in class. Let's hang out at the mall after class. And I fashion the note into a paper airplane. And I throw the airplane up in the air, hoping that it makes its way to you so you can read the note. Let's say as that paper airplane is floating through the air, before it gets to you, another student jumps up and snatches that paper airplane out of the air and puts it in his own pocket. Well, worst case scenario, now that student knows what I tried to communicate to you. So what? Now you know that I'm asking this girl to go to the mall with me. Who cares? So I get another piece of paper. I write the same message on it. I float it to her. She catches it this time. She opens it. She reads it. And after class, she says, sure, I'll go to the mall with you after class. What time do you want to go? You say 4:30, it's a date. Now, you have accomplished your mission. You got that girl to go to the mall with you. But now an unauthorized third party also knows that that girl and you have made a date to go to the mall. So, let's say at that beautiful mall visit you got planned, this unauthorized third party says to itself, hey, I don't like the two of them going to the mall. He says this to himself somewhere. I don't like the two of them going to the mall. I've had a crush on her forever. I want her to go to the mall with me instead. I don't like the fact the two of them are going together. I'm going to try to sabotage that date. Okay, so now you have an unauthorized third party who snatched your information out of the air, who's going to try to use that information to sabotage you with it now. Now he becomes a hostile actor. At first he was just nosy. At first he was just pestering. At first he was just an unwelcomed participant in a communication you sent. But now he's making himself an enemy because he's trying to use the information he stole from you against you. So you and your date, you go to the mall. This guy's waiting out in the parking lot, wants to disrupt you. So he walks in the mall with the intention of doing some great bodily harm to one or the other of you. The guy figures out what's happening, turns around, punches the saboteur right in his face. The guy goes down hard. All right, we're not talking any light blow. We're talking about the kind of hit that George Foreman used to knock down Joe Frazier. Okay, the saboteur falls to his face. The guy and his date are horrified that this man did that. The guy remembers, hey, you're the schmuck that stole my letter today. And here you are trying to disrupt me. You got what you had coming to you. Furthermore, I'm going to get the police out here because you tried to cause me bodily harm. So the guy calls the police. The police take a report. They look at the cameras to verify that he was acting in self-defense, and the saboteur gets thrown in jail. You understand? There's something to be learned from this parable that I have just given you. As more street theater makes its way my way for whatever reason. Let me keep going. Maybe they liked my story. So, the hero won. He got rid of his enemy. And now he's a lot more careful with how he communicates messages to his girl. Now he communicates messages in such a way that they cannot be intercepted easily. What is data interception, ladies and gentlemen, and how does it factor into gang stalking campaigns? Well, me, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, have my data intercepted on a daily basis. And yes, my data is intercepted with the expectation that the grabber of my data will be able to intercept my movements with hostility, excuse me, clearing my throat, hostility, street theater, subversive acts, containment, disruption, germ spreading, disease communication, attempted vehicular manslaughter, and other such thuggery that I experience on a daily basis here in South Florida. All of these acts are made possible by data interception. If I send an email to my significant other, hey babe, on the 137 bus, I'll be on Kendall Drive at 10 o'clock, and I hope to be there at home by 11:30. I got gang stalkers with Stingray devices, and I know you have them because you're hell bent on sabotaging E.I. Smith in any way you possibly can because you think it'll work. You don't really believe that I have you figured out this precisely, but I do. I can paint a very exact picture of you, what you do, and why you do it. I can also paint a very precise picture of who you have around you assisting you and why you have all these people helping you and assisting you, because it makes you feel big, it makes you feel important, it makes you feel like some kind of hotshot to use government mechanisms and military industrial technology to sabotage other American citizens. But you know what I think of you? I've been saying it to you for 10 years now, and I'm going to say it to you once again today. You are a barnacle. Okay? And I'm not even going to give you the definition of that. I'm going to make you look it up because I know you're listening. And I know you want to know what that is. So I'm going to make you go Google it. And whatever the definition that comes up, that's what I think of you. That's what I think of your mechanism. That's what I think of the people that are with you. That's what my significant other Lori thinks of you as well. And I can promise you that is not going to change. As I see Street Theater to my immediate right, he's obviously an undercover, obviously bugging me or using a wire or whatever. And that's perfectly fine because you know what he's doing? He's looking for threats. And that's what a lot of the street theater, I'll call them street theater personnel that come around me, particularly when I'm doing these lectures, what they're looking for. They're coming around me with bugging equipment and wires and other such recording equipment, listening to what I have to say, and they're looking to report a threat of some kind. That's ultimately what they're looking for. They're looking to nitpick my words and find some kind of threat so they'll have some kind of an excuse to put together another gang stalking campaign and continue pestering me at the expense of the American taxpayer. That's perfectly fine. Because you know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to put this big, beautiful video on all of my web pages. And the whole world is going to see the kind of thuggery that the United States federal government has authorized, implemented, and continued financing at the expense of its own credibility and reputation as a democracy and a constitutional republic. It's only going to continue to make the USA look terrible. So if you guys want to keep playing these games, these little synchronization games, these little pestering games, these little disruption games, go right ahead. I've told you 1,000 times you've messed with the wrong one. I see right through you, and I'm ready to expose you on a daily basis, administratively and online. So keep making the United States government look like an idiotic, silly, pestering, disruption, and harassment tool at its own expense. Because when the story is told, people are going to look back on these matters and they're going to say, wow, I really feel sorry for the legislators that were in office when Emmanuel Isaiah Smith exposed gang stalking. What is data interception, ladies and gentlemen? It is a disruption tactic. It's not a situation where saboteurs that practice gang stalking with the help of federal liaisons are just reading your emails just for the sake of reading your emails. As I see more synchronization to my immediate left, this one looked like a guy that just got out of prison less than 30 minutes ago. Ladies and gentlemen, he's riding past looking like he's looking for a reason to go back. But I digress. Let me continue. Liaisons don't read your emails just to read them, just because they're nosy. They read your emails, and not only emails to a loved one or a friend or a acquaintance or a social media colleague or what have you. They're reading emails to lawyers, to doctors. They're reading your official business, okay? They're reading your official government business. Emails sent to you by governmental agencies. And yeah, they're getting into every aspect of your life. So they'll have a better idea of how to pester you when you go outside your home. There's an old saying, it goes like this: know your enemy. And apparently the United States federal establishment has made me an enemy. It's never officially declared me an enemy of the state, but it has made me an enemy by allowing these mobsters, all right, these pricks, these federally sanctioned dirtbag goons that are constantly in my way, constantly looking to cause instigations, constantly looking to spread germs and bacteria, constantly looking to pester or annoy me every single day. They're federally sanctioned, okay? And mind you, my background as an athlete has assisted me greatly in my gang stalking campaign, both physically and psychologically. I can only imagine what a targeted individual who was not an athlete has to experience, assuming I'm not the only targeted individual on planet Earth, ladies and gentlemen. But ultimately, my physical fitness has played into this matter. Okay. 9/11 was called a terrorist attack, right? About 3,500 Americans were killed on American soil by the attack. That was called a terrorist act. How many targeted individuals have died as a result of their gang stalking campaign? Over the past 60 years, ladies and gentlemen, this program has been steadily growing for 60 years, and now it's kind of at its peak as far as I can tell. I don't see how it could get any more pervasive than it is now. How many targeted persons, again, assuming I'm not the only one on planet Earth, assuming there are others, how many of those you think have died as a result of their gang stalking campaign over the past 60 years? I can promise you it's more than 3,500. So if 3,500 U.S. citizens dying in a day is called terrorism, let's assume 50,000 targeted persons have died over the past 60 years. What do you call that? Terrorism times 10? That's why I have said in various posts and in various blogs that the U.S. federal establishment is criminally negligent in authorizing gang stalking campaigns, and is also a state-sanctioned terrorist enabling entity. If 3,500 dead is terrorism, 50,000 dead is terrorism. You cannot draw a line between the two. Okay? There are some very wise and intelligent scholars, historians, that look at the regime of Adolf Hitler in the 1940s, the Third Reich Chancellor of Nazi Germany during World War II. He is alleged to have ordered he either directly ordered or indirectly caused the deaths of countless numbers of people of the Jewish ethnicity in particular. Most historians call that state-sanctioned murder because it's murder that is perpetrated by a state, a government. a country, a nation. Now, I'm not one to kind of paint Germany with that broad of a brush. I mean, every country has periods of time in its history that it isn't proud of. Every country has acts that have been perpetrated by their governments that it's not proud of. Every country has instances, even in times of war, where its military carried out activities that it's not proud of. Germany is the same way. Now, no doubt some Germans are proud of Adolf Hitler. They call those people typically far right wingers. But I think most Germans disagree with that method of population control that Hitler used and are not proud of it. Germany to this day is a beautiful country, and it has an amazing history aside from that catastrophe. And I'm not one to paint Germany with that broad of a brush because of the acts of Adolf Hitler. But what Adolf Hitler did was state-sanctioned murder. If what Hitler did was state-sanctioned murder, then what the United States federal establishment, particularly its national security apparatus, is doing to people on the ground is state-sanctioned murder. Because it's murder that is happening with the power and the sanctioning of the state. Yes, gang stalking is state-sanctioned terrorism. Not just because it annoys a person to no end, but because it could have potentially deadly consequences. It's a dangerous, dangerous mechanism. And the signaling that goes on in a gang stalking campaign is not to make the targeted person blink. It's not to make them jump. It's not to make them roll their eyes. The kinds of signaling that happen in a gang stalking campaign around a targeted person, which essentially signals people and vehicles to a targeted person's exact location anytime, anywhere, they're made to actually cause physical harm to the target. That's the point. Okay? The point of signaling a sick or germ-ridden stalker to a targeted person's exact location so that that diseased or sick person will have a better chance of communicating some sort of a sickness or disease to the target. That's the point of it. That's not what they call an unintended consequence. Okay? The point of signaling, which is something that federal liaisons strategically planted throughout the United States use to signal various gang stalkers who have been plugged into the mechanism, okay, is to signal them without words, without direct words anyway. They use code words sometimes, but oftentimes they use physical signals, verbal commands, vehicular maneuvers, and so forth. The goal is for one malicious actor to signal another malicious actor to a targeted person's exact location, regardless of if the targeted person has done anything to them or not. You could be just sitting there eating a sandwich, and if there's a gang stalker in your vicinity who wants to signal another gang stalker, I call them malicious actors, they can do that to you fairly easily and disrupt your meal, possibly even making you sick, because when you're eating, you're ingesting. So if one of these disgusting, disgusting wandering thuggish goon stalkers signal another one to your immediate vicinity so they can cough or sneeze on you while you're eating, okay, yeah, they do stuff like that, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I constantly have Lysol or Windex or body spray or rubbing alcohol in a spray bottle, anything I can carry to immediately kill germs. As I see some more street theater to my immediate left, anything I can do to kill germs, any time of the day, any time of the night, that's what I take with me if I have to leave the house. And that is because I know I have gang stalkers, and I know that one of the tactics that they use on me presently is intentional germ communication. And they use behaviors like coughing, like sneezing, like flicking bodily excrements, or using other disgusting bodily functions in my immediate vicinity as a result of signals they took over and over and over and over and over again, several times a day, several times a week. All of this compounded can cause various types of germ communications. Now, mind you, I've been vaccinated against every virus that there is, so they're not going to have any luck with that. But even if you come in contact with a virus, you're going to be sick for a few days while your body fights it off. Even if it's for 1 day or 2 days, your body's going to fight that virus off because you've been vaccinated, but your body is still in a state of defense. So my body has been in a constant state of defense since January because of all these knuckleheaded goon stalkers that are signaling sick goon stalkers to my exact location simply to try and arbitrarily communicate some sort of an airborne bacteria to me. And I've probably racked up $20,000 in medical bills in the process since January. And I can promise you, none of these goon stalkers are going to jump up and say, "Hey, Smith, we didn't mean to get you sick, pal. Let us chip in on that 20,000. No. Okay, after they communicate that germ, after they take that signal, after they make that move, after they use that domination tactic, they jump up and they ride off into the sunset. You will never see them again. You'll never hear from them again. You'll never talk to them again. Their mission is complete. They ticked you off. They sent off an airborne bacteria towards you. They messed up your meal. They messed up your day. They messed up your whatever. Now they're going to take off. That's how they operate. What is data interception, ladies and gentlemen? It gives a person a clear opportunity to disrupt you. One of the early forms of data interception was eavesdropping. You remember when you're back in the day when you had the rotary phones? Some of you. Or you had the phones that had the dial pad on them, the landline phones, or you had the cordless phones with the dial pad in your home. And you could be talking to somebody, and if you had another landline in the house, somebody else in the house could go up and pick that landline up and hear everything you were saying to the other person. Okay, that's data interception. The conversation between parties A and B is data. You, as party C, gathering that data for yourself is called interception. You see? And quite frankly, another way that data was easily intercepted was through the mechanism known as phone tapping. You're on a phone, you're talking to another person, a third party uses a stingray device or some other type of device to listen into your phone call and gather information. That's phone tapping. Email interception is when you send an email and somebody with some sort of technological device intercepts that email and stores it. That's email interception. The same can be said for text message interception. There are devices like stingray devices which mimic cellular towers that can intercept text messages. You can intercept recordings. Like this recording I'm doing right now on my tablet, it's being intercepted right now as we speak. There's a third party that has access to my tablet right this very second that is getting a live feed of everything I'm saying all together. I don't know who the person is. They probably don't know who I am. They probably just see my project and are scared to death because I'm exposing them hand and foot on a daily basis to the entire world. So they have a reason to be scared. That's why they've hacked everything I do. Plus, they're probably jealous because they have to take all those rinky-dink signals, and I get to expose those rinky-dink signals on the internet on a big, beautiful, sprawling website. They got the short end of the stick on that, ladies and gentlemen. What is data interception? It's when you clandestinely intercept messages between parties that were not meant for you. You're not satisfying your curiosity when you do that. I'm talking to you liaisons. I'm talking to you undercovers, particularly the undercovers that try to get me sick on a daily basis. I know you're out there. And what's funny is I always grew up respecting undercover work because I always understood, particularly from movies and television shows where I saw undercovers, I figured, wow, undercover work, it takes quite a bit of commitment to do undercover work. Those guys really go in there and do their jobs with distinction. And that was the idea of undercover work that I had as a kid based on the movies I watched. And it's funny because when I finally meet undercovers in real life, they're using signals and verbal commands and all these funky gestures, and they're acting like schmucks and trying to communicate germs to me and getting all in my face and misinterpreting everything I say and creating false narratives about me and mocking me and attempting to get me into altercations, and they're getting in my way and cutting me off using all kinds of synchronous tactics. And I'm like, man, forget those movies. Undercovers are some schmucks. Because I finally get to meet you, and what do? You try to get me sick so that I'll keep having to go to the hospital and pile up medical bills. That's thuggery in action for you right there. I don't care if you're an undercover or not. And I don't care where you're an undercover either. You could be a military undercover. You could be a state law enforcer undercover. You could be a local law enforcer undercover. If you're using your capacity as an undercover to violate my constitutional rights, I'm going to let you know right here on the internet what I think of that. I think it's garbage. And I want to have respect for you, because I've done semi-law enforcement work myself, doing citizen patrol over an Olympic Park. There's a bunch of criminally insane knuckleheads that hang out back there. Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office and myself, in various capacities, have worked to curb that problem. So I've had some experience in the law enforcement mechanism myself, particularly over the past 5 months. I want to respect what you do, but I don't, because you use your capacity to piss people off and get in people's way and cause collisions and all kinds of goofy stuff. It's a shame you have to rely on gang stalking to do your job. I think it makes you less safe. What is data interception, ladies and gentlemen? Is when a third party or multiple third parties grab information that does not belong to them. Now, since 9/11 happened, the national security atmosphere in the United States has changed. Things are not quite as easy to read as it once was in this country. Things are not always what they seem anymore. As a matter of fact, things are less what they seem than ever before. So because the nature of national security has changed, the reason the nature of national security has changed, the nature of military work has changed, the nature of police work has changed, the nature of citizen patrolling has changed. The nature of what it means to be a safe person has changed, particularly over the past 25 years. So of course data needs to be collected in some capacity to make sure people are doing right and not threatening or to blow up buildings or crash airplanes into structures and carry out AK-47 attacks on massive numbers of people. Okay, if stuff like that is being ascertained by the national security apparatus, of course you intercept and you react. But if all you're doing is intercepting data, even if you are a part of the national security apparatus, simply so you know where someone is going, so you can disrupt that person before they get there, that's thuggery and a misappropriation of taxpayer resources. Now maybe you're getting back at me on behalf of somebody else. Maybe all of this street theater and all this disruption and all this synchronization and all this other thuggery that I'm seeing and experiencing is on behalf of somebody. Somebody who's too scared to walk up to me and look me in the face and tell me what their problem is. Or maybe it's being done on behalf of somebody without that person's knowledge. Maybe I had an enemy 20 years ago who had government connections, and those government connections saw that they had an enemy in me, and they put me in a gang stalking campaign to protect that other person. You might think that's the right thing to do. I call it thuggery. And a violation of my constitutional rights. Now we can keep doing this. We can keep playing these synchronization games. We can do it all you want. Because I can talk about this stuff forever. And eventually all you're going to do is you're going to make America look worse and worse and worse. And we're not just talking with America's detractors. We're talking about with America's allies. You realize your allies are going to lose respect for you as a sovereign entity when it finds out that you're using military-industrial stratagem to disrupt your citizens' trajectory through their lives directly in conflict with constitutional precepts. You are just going to make yourself look worse and worse and worse, and eventually your economy is going to suffer. Because if other countries decide to do less business with you because of something you're doing to your citizens illegally in a state-sanctioned capacity, those countries might choose to stop doing business with you on the level that they are. That's going to hurt your economy. Then what you're going to do? The economy is everything. The economy is indeed the centerpiece of all other components of a sovereign entity. If your economy fails, your entity's going to fail. In many of my other posts and lectures, I've described the United States of America as a failed state because it does not honor its Constitution or its democratic foundings. But if your economy fails because you can't keep your hands or your nose off of the business of people who you have no business pestering in the first place, then you're going to have a literally failed state. I've called America a failed state from philosophical perspectives, but you're going to cause a real collapse because you're not able to honor the very Constitution that this country was founded on. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen.